Well, hello again. Les Miller here. Just trying out a different microphone today, see if I can make a better video than I did yesterday with the new camera. Praising God again and thanking Him very much for providing for me. Our topic today will be how to teach Sabbath school. If you've noticed from a lot of my other videos, there is a common theme that I like to talk about a lot. And that is this idea of what I call a complete circle of truth, where each truth relates to every other truth. And of course, most of the time when I've been discussing this, it's usually been in the setting of how to give evangelistic home Bible studies. But when you think about it, what is a Sabbath school lesson? It's a Bible study, right? So why can't we take this same idea and apply it in that sense? And in fact, we can. No matter what the topic is, in each week, you'll always find the same kind of format. On the Sabbath afternoon page, you end up with an overview of the topic for the entire week. And then every day, Sunday through Thursday, it's broken down into its individual components. And then on Friday, what you get is a summary of everything you just learned. So again, that already suggests some sort of circle of truth format. So what you want to do, if you're going to really discover how this circle of truth format applies to any one weekly lesson, what you want to do, and the best way I think to get the most out of a lesson before you teach it so you can give the most to it, is don't do what most people do, and that is read that one page only on that one day, using it as a devotional, and go through it every day. What you need to do is take the lesson as a whole. Read that entire week, all the way through, just read it. Don't answer any of the questions, don't look up any of the Bible verses. Then read it again a second time. Now you look up the Bible verses and you answer the questions. And then you read it a third time. And that is when you actually make up your notes for your study plan. So what you want to do in this 3-read format, you're trying to discover the main point of the lesson. From that point on, what you're trying to do in each page, on each day, you're trying to find the one sentence, the one part of one paragraph that seems to encapsulate that main point the best for that day. That's what you want to read, that's what you want to talk about, that's what you want to ask all your questions to the audience in relation to. You want to get them not so much, it's not so much that you're trying to tell them the main point as you're trying to bring it out of them using questions. And that's where a Sabbath school study is a bit different than an evangelistic home Bible study. But that's basically what you want. What's the main point of each page? How does it relate to or progress the overall theme of the lesson? And then you can bring in other questions like, what can we learn from this point and the overall theme that will apply to us as individuals today? And also to some of these great questions like the Great Controversy theme, our place in world history and prophecy as it's unfolding. And any other topics you can think of. Any counterfeits in the world, in other churches, that this lesson kind of covers, refutes a little with the truths that it preaches. And about asking questions itself, I mean, there's different ways you can do it. I have a friend in my home church. He likes to specifically ask people, the people that normally talk a lot. And I know some people are really shy. You don't want to put them on the spot. You want to try to encourage them. But some people just don't want to talk. But the ones that do, he's always specifically asking them, all right, what is your opinion? And then gets the next one. The way I like to do it, I will look around the audience and I will look for who seems to be thinking the most. And even a shy person might want to say one thing once in a while, if only the people who are too talkative like me would just give them some time, some chance. So that's what I like to do, is try to give that person a chance. And if they don't want to talk, I don't push them. But remember, you are the teacher, and you are the one who makes the lesson come to life. Nothing can be more boring than to just read the lesson word for word, looking up every verse, reading every question, getting just one or two basic answers with no real stimulation to the discussion. People who come to a class like that, they'll just say, well, that's what I did at home. What's different? You know, I mean, some people like to take the idea of, well, we've already studied the lesson, let's take it off in a different direction, and they'll kind of go on a tangent. I mean, sometimes that's okay, but sometimes I kind of think, well, you know, we should dwell on the lesson itself a little bit more. It's kind of up to the individual teacher. But you want to be able to have something for people that's rich, that's dynamic, that's more than just words on paper. Now, a lot of sports fans in the world will know in any sporting event, there's always two different people covering the event. One is the play-by-play man, and one gives color commentary. What's the difference? And what does it have to do with Sabbath school? Well, the first one is telling you what's happening on the field, what's happening on the court. And then the other one, what he's doing, he's filling dead air with statistics. He's doing more than that, though. He's adding a richness and a flavor to the experience, that while the ball is down and the referee is walking around and about to make a call or something, and he's going on and on about, well, so-and-so who just made that play, he has a record in the last 3 seasons of making the same play the most amount of times. Well, what he's doing is kind of this richness, like I said. What you want to do, have 2 thoughts in the back of your mind. What is the idea that's being gotten across here? But also, what does it mean? Again, how can we apply it to ourselves today? Now, one thing that you've probably noticed, you get people who always have pet topics. I remember years ago, I don't know why, it was an older man in the particular class he was in charge of. He asked me to teach about once every 6 weeks. But every time I went, no matter what the topic was, for some reason he would always steer the conversation around to one particular pet peeve of his. And his question was always the same. If you go into a bar, does your guardian angel stay at the door? I have no idea why. He constantly dwelled on that. But you'll get people, right? Especially, every church seems to have one. A little on the extremist side, or fanatical, or as one conference president said to me once, unbalanced church members, right? You know, you want to try to shut those people down as nicely as possible without compromising yourself, without driving them away. We had a Sabbath school conference a couple of years ago here in Alberta, where I live, and they brought people together and then gave them some training on how to teach. Some of their ideas were pray ahead, of course, for wisdom and strength. You always want to pray in preparation for your lesson no matter what. You've got to give that person some acknowledgement, some affirmation, but you don't condemn, you don't criticize. And you want to make sure to humble your own heart. Maybe the problem is your reaction is too far on the other side of that same issue. And remember, if he's really distracting the study, be gentle, be assertive. And remain calm, do not debate. One particular piece of information I learned once from an evangelism training course I took was, never get angry, because then that which is holy will have been brought down to a common level. You don't want to do that. If possible, maybe you can have a follow-up discussion with that person at lunch after the worship service. But one thing you can do And this is very important because even if it's somebody who talks a lot about the good things of the truth rather than a side issue, if they're just talking and talking and talking and it seems like the Sabbath school class is really all just about them, remember all those talk shows from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s. When the person hosting the show, Phil Donahue, Oprah Winfrey, a number of others, they would hold on to the microphone. And whatever the topic was, the guest would come and speak a little, and Phil or Oprah would ask him some questions. They'd go into the audience, and it was always, and what do you think? But they would never give the microphone over to the other person. The host always held the microphone. You are the host of the discussion. You have to be the one to control the discussion. Very subtly, very carefully, but you still have to be the one. Don't just let them go on and on and on and on. By holding the microphone, it gave him a reason to stop that person from talking by saying, oh, somebody over here's got something to say. Let's go get that person, right? So what you do, you've got somebody rambling on and on and on. You're looking for the slightest little pause. Any way you can just get right in there and say, yeah, thank you very much. And what do you think? And just get that discussion moving further forward. And what's the best way to get a person who talks too much to stop? Nominate them to teach next year. And then they'll feel that level of responsibility. Again, to bring out from others, not so much to bring to the discussion what they think. Now, Sabbath school can be kind of confusing for new people. When I first joined the church, I found it kind of strange that the question would be asked, the Bible verse would be there to look up, but then the rest of the paragraph would be an Ellen White quote. And it seemed like there was more Ellen White to me than Bible. Always prove your points with Bible verses. Use Ellen White only to elaborate on your points. And remember, if you've got a large group of quiet people, you might be stuck having to fill time at the end. So plan to have a little more than you really need to talk about. And when the first bell happens, just kind of quickly look over your notes and decide what one or two few things left you need to really talk about. Just give a skim, read to your notes, and then quickly just get those discussions underway. And at the last bell, no matter what, even if you're still stuck on the Monday page and using this format, you should be able to progress the lesson past the Sunday page, past the Monday page every week. But either way, no matter what, no matter how much more you have to say, the bell is the bell. It's time to stop. So the rule of thumb I like to have, especially again for new people, another thing I did, I might be mentioning this again in another video, but when I first joined the church, I filled in every blank of every page of every week for the first year and a half, and it got to be too much. I was overwhelmed. Somebody misses a lesson and they're overwhelmed with guilt. And what are they going to do? Now they have 2 lessons to do next week. More than 10 years, Sabbath school was the highlight of my week, and I went to almost every class. But in a 13-week quarter, I would always end up missing 1 or 2. I never got through an entire 13 weeks without something happening. The rule of thumb for Sabbath school: get what you can out of it and then move on. And it's the same for the quarter as it is for the end of that one lesson. When the second bell happens, that's it. Pray. One last concluding statement, which is the main point of the lesson. Try to get that main point into 1 or 2 sentences and say it as your final words. Or don't be afraid to let someone else have the final say. But pray, and that's it. It's over. So, quick wrap up. Again, a few things I might be talking about in other videos to come. Why do we bother to run Revelation seminars? Why are we always talking about doctrine? Why aren't we like other churches, just focusing on the love of Jesus and salvation? Well, You'll note something very careful. In Matthew 24:14, Jesus said this gospel would be preached in all the world. But in Galatians 1:9, Paul says, if anyone preaches any other gospel to you. So when you think about those background questions that I've talked about before, who is God? What has he done for me? What does he want me to do for him in return? You need doctrine as part of that answer to that third question in order to create what Paul said in Ephesians 4:5, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. And Sabbath school, the fact that all of us are studying one lesson at the same time, greatly contributes to our oneness. It's not just political oneness in our church, organizational unity. It's not just unity through love, but it's doctrinal unity as well. That's the one Lord, one faith, one baptism. Here's a great quote from Ellen White. The Sabbath school is an important branch of the missionary work, not only because it gives to young and old a knowledge of God's Word, but because it awakens in them a love for its sacred truths and a desire to study them for themselves. Above all, it teaches them to regulate their lives by its holy teachings. So we'll end with a modified version of Jesus' words in Matthew 18:20, where 20 million are gathered in my name, I am there among them.